Hi, I'm Bruce Walton from Road Safety Analysis, and this is the 9th in a series of 10 bite-sized demonstrations of my favourite things which MAST can do. In this clip, I'm going to have a look at how MAST allows you to narrow down your reports to identify the most relevant factors that you possibly can by introducing you to the idea of data hierarchies in MAST. And by way of an example, I'm going to investigate a simple hypothesis. Is it true that motorcycles crash in the rain more often than cars do? Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to create a vehicles report in MAST. I'm just going to go into the vehicles blank report there. And I'm going to tell it that I want to do a report about motorcycles. So I'm going to click on the filter tab and I'm going to add the vehicle type dimension. There we are. And I'm going to filter to motorcycles. There we go. And that tells me that there's about 145,000 motorcycles crashed in the UK during the period of time that we're covering. Now we want to analyse it by weather conditions. Now, of course, the Stats 19 field that describes the conditions of the weather at the time of a crash are included in MAST, as is most of the rest of the Stats 19 dataset. So if I go onto the Columns tab, I can very easily click on Add Dimension and add the Conditions Weather dimension. Now, I want to add this dimension in two different ways and show you the difference between the two techniques. First of all, I'm going to use the most obvious technique, which is simply to click on it like that, so the name of it goes highlighted, and then click on OK. And that works, the dimension appears, and it's correctly analysed the number of motorcycles. But you'll notice it's analysed the motorcycles by the wind conditions, by whether the weather was calm or whether the weather was windy. As being the top level of the hierarchy that is used. Now, that doesn't actually match the question that I wanted to look at. I wanted to look at whether or not it was wet, not whether or not it was windy. So let's have a look at how you can go about doing that. I'm going to remove the conditions weather dimension, and then I'm going to add it again, but this time I'm going to use a different technique. Rather than just clicking on the name of the dimension, I'm going to click on the little plus sign next to it, which expands the dimension into its component elements. Now, I'm going to talk about most of these elements in a later bite size. The ones I particularly want to talk about in this bite size are the ones with this little pyramid symbol next to them. They are the hierarchies within the dimension. And as you can see, we've got a hierarchy called weather wet. Now, the default hierarchy, the one that it gave me automatically when I chose conditions weather, was the weather windy hierarchy. But that's very useful if you're looking at high-sided vehicles, but it's not relevant to what I'm doing. So I'm going to choose the weather wet hierarchy because it's most relevant to the point that I'm examining. I'm then going to click on OK. And as you can see, my analysis now splits my motorcycles into ones that crashed in dry conditions and one that crashed in wet conditions. If I wanted to express that as a percentage, the easiest way to do it, by the way, would be to put these numbers into Excel. It's very easy to do that. Just click on the download Excel link, say open. If Excel asks you a question about whether you're happy with the file, say yes. And there you have it. There's the numbers in Excel, and I can easily type a formula in that gives me the percentage of all bikes crashing in known conditions who crashed in the wet. And there's the answer. If I format that, we find that 12% of bikes involved in crashes crashed in the wet. Now, the great thing about MAST is if you've prepared a report and you want to move the goalpost to test a different thing, it's very easy to do it. I want to compare that percentage with the percentage of cars that crashed in the wet. To do that, all I need to do is click on Filter, go back to my vehicle type dimension, which you'll remember I added earlier, turn motorbikes off and turn cars on. Click on OK, and I've got exactly the same information except for cars. Let's find out what the cars percentage is. Into Excel we go. There we are. There's the same information for cars. I put in the same formula. There we go. Except I can't type. That's better. And when I apply percentages to that, we see that 16% of cars crashed in the wet. So, motorbikes crash in dry conditions more often than cars do. Could it be that bikers don't go out in the wet? Well, you might say that, but I couldn't possibly comment. There's an example of how MAST can provide you with hard information to back up commonly held suppositions. Well, that's all I've got time for in this bite size. In the next bite size, I'll move on to look at something a little bit different.